Thank you. My understanding is on medical marijuana was originally approved for 3 days. We've taken 2. Is this the 4th day then that we're approving?
I believe so.
So the 2 additional days that we haven't met yet?
I'm not certain how many days they've met.
I've met 2.
Sorry. They've met for 2 days, and they were requesting 2 additional days.
So actually, they're only requesting 1 additional day because they've been approved for 3.
No, they were approved for 3. They've met for 2. They have 1 that they're planning on meeting, and then they're asking for 2 additional ones in this letter.
Okay, so the motion is to approve 1 day for the Child Welfare Committee and 1 day, additional day for medical marijuana. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 3, update on certain provisions of the 2021 House Bill number 2196 in the Legislature Employment Security Fund. J.G. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to give everybody a quick update on where we are. This is the $500 million that was appropriated for basically UI purposes. $250 million was already transferred from the federal COVID funding into the unemployment trust fund. There was an additional $250 million that was transferred into the LCC for use to, upon certification, and we'll go through those a little bit more, to distribute to the UI. The Unemployment Compensation Modernization Improvement Council, they met and they certified an amount to the Division of Budget from the forensic audit of forces of $108 million that they would recommend being transferred. And they also recommended $20 million be left in that fund for additional use if additional fraud is identified. That certification went shortly after the December 19th meeting. The next step in that process was to have Division of Budget certify the amount to the LCC. The council certified $108 million that they believe was the correct amount for the transfer to the Division of Budget. Division of Budget then would need to certify an amount to the LCC. The LCC would refer that to the Legislative Budget Committee to make sure that that they're okay with an amount and transmit that back to the LCC. And then the LCC could transfer the amount that is certified to the Unemployment Trust Fund. So that's the process for that, the additional $250 million. $250 million is already there. This is for the additional, certified at $108 million from the council. The Division of Budget has yet to certify that number. There's some conversations, I guess, that's going on about the correct amount. So the process is stopped at item number 2, that transfer from Division of Budget to the LCC. So just wanted to give everybody an update on where we were with that process, if asked.
Yeah, we anticipate having another meeting next month, and hopefully the differences between the committee and the budget office can be resolved. Because our next step is that we have to approve it, then the J.G. Scott said, and then goes to our joint budget committee to oversee, and then before it can be spent. Again, this body, there's a $250 million in an account that this body controls, but the only thing we can spend it on is UI Trust Fund. And we have to get that correct number. So this is more of an update. Hopefully it's resolved soon and we can, proceed our next meeting. Any other questions? Thank you, JG. Item number 3, update. Nope, that's item number 3. Item number 4, authorization to conduct new member orientation. Susan Kennard.
Good morning. Thank you. So this is something we do every other year. This year, of course, it's just for representatives, for newly elected members. We conduct an orientation. We're back to our normal schedule after kind of a rearrangement in 2020 due to COVID. So we're back to the Monday afternoon after leadership elections on December 5th, and then most of the day on the 6th. There's a little rearrangement. We normally have a dinner for the new members and newly elected leadership at the Historical Museum. That is closed for renovations for the next 18 months. So we have relocated to the Caleb McFarland venue at the Topeka Zoo. And it's also during Zoo Lights, if any of you are familiar with that. So I'm offering them the opportunity that they could buy tickets and go support the zoo by going to Zoo Lights after the dinner. I stand for any questions.
We have questions? Representative Hawkins.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize the new member orientation.
Is there a second? Second by President Masterson. Discussion? All in favor of the authorization signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Authorization of transition budgets and office space for leadership offices of newly elected legislative leaders. Tom Day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is, again, another one of the items that we do every 2 years. It's authorizing transition budgets for new leaders when they take office after leadership elections. It is 2.5 pay periods worth of that leadership budget, that specific leadership budget. And the LCC typically authorizes transition budgets and office space if necessary for the new leaders that have been elected on this year, December 5th. We would just need authorization for those transition budgets, Mr. Speaker.
Any discussion? Representative Hawkins.
Mr. Speaker, I move we authorize the transition budget and office space if needed for leadership offices.
Second by President Masterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 7, consideration of approval of pricing for legislative highlights and summary of legislative documents for 2023. Susan Kinar. Looks like I skipped 6. Let's move back up a second. Consideration of approval of legislative agency budgets. Let's start with Tom Day.
Mr. Speaker,
I wish that was intentional to give you, but it wasn't.
the next one was mine too, so I believe, are we going to go through each individual? Is that, you want to go through each individual one? And I will start with the LCC's budget.
Please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Legislative Coordinating Council budget for 2023-2024, we have requested an adjustment to the FY23 budget, which was approved by the LCC and by the Legislature at $752,441. After passage of the budget bill last year, that new amount is $783,653. This covers the salaries and wages of the Legislative Coordinating Council for Legislative Coordinating Council meetings, as well as the Office of Legislative Administrative Services. We are lapsing $67,896,000 back to the State General Fund. The costs of these meetings are also included in this budget, and no monies have been funded or budgeted for special committees. That's for FY23. Also for FY24, the amount is $758,613,000. Again, it covers LCC meetings, LCC travel to these meetings, as well as legislative administrative services. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions.
Any questions for Tom on the LAS budget? Not seeing any. Let's move on to Senator Sykes.
Thank you. Just a question on that number 5 on the chart the accounts payable process within statutory. What is the discrepancy on that? Why is it at 98%? What is?
Every once in a while, we get an invoice that comes in that is not paid within the Kansas Prompt Payment Act area. Most of the time, it is because whoever is sending us the invoice has not sent it within a 30-day period, and we may need that extra 2 to 3 days. We won't miss that 30-day by much, but every once in a while we do. And we have backup materials, either emails saying, we're sorry we didn't send this, or whatever the case may be. And 98% is maybe 5 a year, five invoices a year.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions for Tom Day? JG, you want to talk about KLRD?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Legislative Research Department, we have an approved a budget this year of a little bit over $4.9 million. Our request is about $5.12 million. We did have $236,000 in reappropriations, so that brought what we could spend up to the 5.3, almost 5.4 million. We are lapsing, giving back about $237,000 for that $5.1 million budget. We are filling all 41 positions that we have, and 2 fellow positions that we have every year. For FY 2024, our budget request is $5,037,000, almost $38,000. So it's about a $90,000 reduction from the 2003. And we continue with the 41. There was 1 position added for the KLIS project.
Any questions for JG? All right. Do we want to do the legislative budget now in this, Tom Day?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I thought that's what we were going to do there, but we did KLRD. So the legislature's budget for FY23 and FY24, the amount requested for FY23 and approved by the LCC a year ago was $23,172,000. The amount approved by the 2022 legislature was $28,687,000. That's a difference of $5.5 million. We had carryover, the total of that, including the carryover, was $33,874,000. We are lapsing $3,512,000 throughout this. The legislature's budget covers all the legislature, salary, wages, subsistence, travel, as well as the legislative information technology area. During the 2022 legislative session, $5.089 million was appropriated for the modernization of the KLIS system, as well as 6 FTE. And that is included in that final figure revised 23 budget of $30,362,000 for FY23. FY24, we are requesting $25,644,000. That'll be a reduction from the revised estimate of FY23, and also 56 FTE. The 6 FTE that are included in FY23 and 24, the additional from FY22, were approved for the KLIS modernization system, along with 3 positions total for KLRD and the revisor's office. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions. We have had increases of subsistence, postage, mileage, and we expect mileage again to possibly go up to the IRS 2022 level in January, but that is a decision to be made by the Department of Administration, and we just follow whatever the Department of Administration does. It's not like the subsistence where we follow the federal guidelines. We follow the state's increases in mileage or decreases in mileage when those occur. So,
Any questions? Senator Sykes?
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is for you, Tom, but on the performance measures, is that part of your
of the
report?
legislature.
And maybe just a request to get more information from 2020, now I'm like, fiscal year 21. I'm kind of looking at that email viruses and malware that was protected. I would like to know why it significantly went down, if there was, something that wasn't working well, or of a decrease in some sort of attack on the state, because that's significant, 5 million. And then also would like information on those 5,431 tickets going down to 900, and really would like to get kind of how IT was doing, satisfaction as well as decrease on those.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? One question I have. So you talked about the mileage possibly going up, and you have enough built into this if that happens?
We have plenty in the budget right now to cover that. Yes, sir.
And as, if you guys look at some of the excess, a lot of that's just by the efficiency of this body, both bodies, and, work and not being here and spending a lot of money. So appreciate that. I'm sure that will continue. Let's see, go to Kristen Clark. I'm sorry, Chris Clark, sorry.
No worries. You should have a memo in your packet. It has a little summary on the first page and a table on the second page. I'll just go through it real quickly. Our revised 2023 budget is within our appropriation and allows us to fully staff our agency. We have 26. About $4 million was appropriated to our agency. And based on the revised budget, we will be lapsing back the surplus to the general fund. Our 2023 budget also sets aside funds for contractors to assist us with performance audits and evaluations of economic development incentives. Our requested 2024 budget of $3.5 million is less than our 2023 revised budget. The 2024 budget also allows us to fully staff our agency. It's below our 2023 revised budget because it includes less funding for contractors. That's because we use any leftover monies that we don't spend from fiscal year 2023 revised budget to supplement funding for the 2024 budget. I'll be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for post-audit? Senator Sykes.
Thank you for being here, Chris. My question is, how many audits, and I know we've got a lot that are statutorily required now, what is that limiting able to do other audits? And then I'll ask it, follow up after that.
So you're asking how many audits we do in a year? Mm-hmm. Roughly, I think about 13, 15 last I checked. We do have a number of statutorily required audits of K through 12 education, these economic development incentives. We have to do a CAPERS audit every 3 years. We have to do a 911 audit every 5 years. I think there's one in regarding the economic impact statements. So yeah, when those come into play, then that's less we can do of legislator requests.
Do you have enough flexibility or are there a lot of requested audits that are going undone because of?
We always have more requests than we're able to fill. That's always been the case, which is a good position to be in, but it's unsatisfactory for you all who don't get your requests picked by the committee. So when they're put in statute, it does sort of tie our hands a bit. then we have less flexibility to work in legislator requests.
Okay, and my other question had to do with the recommendations implemented by the audits. I was seeing in 2021, you had 100%. Is that actually true? I'm surprised that it was that high. And then it was 75 in fiscal year '22. The number of audits from year to year, what was the difference?
I'd have to check on the number of audits. This is definitely a factor of the number of recommendations that come from, not all audits yield recommendations. So it's just a math thing. We also allow a 2-year process to count recommendations being implemented. So the 2022 ones those are new recommendations, so they have time to work through the system as well. So I expect that number to go up in the future.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Any further questions? Anybody else want to audit the audit committee's report? I'm just kidding. All right, moving on to Gordon Self. Gordon, you with us?
Yes, I am. I apologize for not being there in person. I was in a meeting on Monday, and an individual that was in that meeting is tested positive for COVID, and as an abundance of caution, I just thought it would be best if I participated remotely. You have in your handout the summary of the Office of Reviser of Statutes and their proposal for FY 2023 revised. We are not asking for any additional funds, and we are requesting that you all lapse the reappropriation that we had for FY 2024. We're asking simply for a slight increase of 23,000. So we're right, both years are right in the 4.4 million range, and that 23,743 is related solely to increases in costs for employee benefit expenditures. We're fully staffed on our attorneys. We have to fill one IT position, and we're working to fill right now through an interview process positions in our publications department.
Do we have any questions for Gordon? I'm not seeing any. Well, committee, we can take all these at one time if it's your pleasure or individually. Does anybody have a preference?
Mr. Speaker, I move we approve the legislative agency budget.
Second by Senator Masterson. Before we vote on this, again, I want to thank all our directors for the great work they do, the confidence that you give us, and the fact that we are confident in the work you're doing to serve the folks of the state. Thank you, and I think that's also reflective of everybody in the questions that were asked, the trust we have in you guys, so thank you for that. All in favor of approving the budget, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now we'll go to item number 7, consideration and approval of pricing for legislative highlights and summary of legislative documents. Tom Day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our annual request for the publication pricing of the legislative highlights and the summary of legislation. The legislative highlights, it's based on the cost estimates from 2022, and it's recommended that the pricing remain at the current level of 75 cents per copy, which includes the sales tax. These are available to the legislators and anyone else. They are also available on KLRD's website. The summary of legislation, we no longer send for printing or sell them due to the high cost of production. They are, again, available in an electronic version from the KLRD website. So the only authorization that is necessary is to remain at the current level of for the pricing of the legislative highlights, as well as if you still want us to not publish the summary of legislation, which can be very thick and be very costly in publication pricing.
Questions for Mr. Day? Representative Hawkins.
Mr. Speaker, I move we approve the pricing for the legislative highlights and the summary of legislation document.
Second by President Masterson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We'll go item number 8, consideration and authorization of printing for permanent House journals and Senate journals. Susan Kinnard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, I know, the memo everyone waits for every year, the recommendation from Corey and I on the printing of the permanent journals. The big news is that there's no new news. It's the same 150 copies that we've done for a number of years. Once again, there's something in the budget that they don't get distributed to legislators. That's been going on since, I think, 2010 or 2011, long time. And we are leaving the cost at the $80 that it's also been at for quite some time. And that's it.
Any questions for Susan or Corey? Just making sure you're awake over there, Corey. All right. Representative Hawkins.
Mr. Speaker, I move we authorize the printing of permanent House journals and Senate journals.
Second by President Masterson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 9 is authorization for the Speaker and the President to assign House of Origins for recommendations, approval of bills and special committees to other interim committees. Is there discussion on this? Entertain a motion. Representative Hawkins.
Mr. Speaker, I move we authorize the Speaker and the Senate President to assign the House of Origin for recommended and approved bills.
Thank you. Seconded by Senate President Masterson. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 10, authorization of joint committees with statutory authority to sponsor legislation to pre-file such bills. Is there discussion? Clarification? Entertain a motion. Representative Hawkins.
Mr. Speaker, I move we approve the statutory authority to sponsor legislation or pre-file such bills.
Seconded by President Masterson. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 11, authorization of certain joint committees to meet during the 2023 legislative session. Is there clarification needed? Discussion? Representative Hawkins.
Mr. Speaker, I move we approve authorization for certain joint committees to meet during the 2023 legislative session.
Thank you. Seconded by Senator Masterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 12, consideration of approval for pricing for the Kansas statutes annotated in supplements thereto for 2023. Gordon Self.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. There's a memo in your packet. Statutory law requires that the LCC set the prices for the Kansas statutes annotated and the supplements. And the statute requires that that be based on the cost of printing and publication. In conversation with the printing plant, each year we look at those prices, and there's a recommendation from the printing plant that is to be based, as I said, solely on the prices of printing, and the costs of printing and materials for both paper and other materials have increased. And so the prices for the 2022 SUPs and hardbounds to be sold primarily in 2023 are listed on that memo, and it's gone up. And so that's the recommendation in order to fully cover the cost.
Questions for Mr. Self? Representative Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move we approve the pricing for the Kansas statutes annotated and supplements thereto for 2023.
Second by Senator Masterson. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 13, consideration of approval of legislative branch holidays during calendar year 2023. Gordon Self.
Mr. Chairperson, there should be a memo there that lays out the proposed holidays for 2023. This is identical to the, or at least the holidays themselves are identical to the ones approved by the LCC for 2022.
Questions from Mr. Self? Discussion? Representative Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make the motion to approve the legislative branch holidays for 2023.
Second by Senator Masterson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let's try that again. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. And we almost didn't have holidays. You guys are mean. Approval of out-of-state travel to meetings of and recognized organizations for calendar year 2023. Tom Day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is our annual request for out-of-state meetings of recognized organizations for calendar year 23. This way, we don't have to come back in June and have to reauthorize more travel. There will be a request sometime, whether it's a May, June, July meeting of the LCC for the Uniform Law Commission. But it is generally covered as well under this authorization for out-of-state travel to recognized meetings for the calendar year 2023.
Questions for Mr. Day? Discussion on this item? Representative Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that we approve the out-of-state travel to meetings of recognized organizations for calendar year 2023.
Second by President Masterson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now for the highlighted of our morning, an update on electronic timesheets. Tom Day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know whether it's a good thing that it's a highlight of this meeting, but the electronic timesheet issue, we have been approved by the Department of Administration Personnel Services for the conversion from time labor paper documents to the electronic timesheets. This conversion will take place over the next month or 6 weeks-ish. It will be go live on January 18th, which is the first pay period of the new calendar year. It will cover the pay period that starts the first day of the legislative session. However, because of the holiday and because of Martin Luther King Day, they will have it go live on Tuesday, the 18th of January. And time can be entered beginning on that Tuesday through that Friday morning of the first pay period of the legislative session. This will take place, many things have to take place, programming from their end, making sure that we have all the entries into the each individual legislator and staff members' personnel records online in the database in SHARP, which is the payroll system. And we will identify the supervisors within each leadership office, and then it will be a requirement that each staff member take the online training courses, as well as it will be required that each staff member put their own time in every pay period and then it will be approved through we approve, that's not the correct word, but we go in and verify all the time so that the pay can take place 2 weeks later for the pay date that covers the pay period that we are currently in at that point. So again, this will go live on January 18th and time will be able to be put in by each individual staff member. We will be covering all the legislators as far as making sure their pay is correct and everything throughout every pay period. So legislators will not have to worry about any of that. We will also take any legislators off of in the payroll system, take them off of the supervisory role, and we will cover that for those that, like your chiefs of staff or a single member that is within the office, like the pro tem and the vice president's office. And we'll take care of that part of it so that the leadership does not have to worry about any of that. With that, Mr. Chairman, we're rolling right along with Department of Personnel Services to get this implemented.
Questions? Senator Sykes.
Thank you for the update. And just a question, are you currently doing any testing? Have you, like, how far along have you got in putting supervisors? And I'm just looking back over, I mean, in May, we were told 5 weeks we would be testing. At our last meeting, you said in a month we would be testing, we would be reaching out, trying to get some of this. So how far along are we, and are you 100% sure that this is going to go live on January 8th?
They have assured us at Personnel Services that it will go live on January 18th.
Okay.
They are the ones that have to do the testing. There are two entities within Personnel Services and Payroll and Accounts and Reports that do the testing once it is put up there. The first item that had to take place was their approval of us doing this. And they had to approve that, and we have that, all that approval and everything else. The I believe he's Deputy Director of Personnel Services, says everything is a go from their end. And like I said, the testing occurs from their end. And then we have to have all of the staff members take the online training and all of that.
Thank you for that update.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Well, that concludes our business. Hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. We are adjourned.